Let's get crackling. Welcome to Sit Down and Cheer, episode number 59. This week's guest, Karl Goehring. So we're bringing our listeners a topical podcast this week.
For once.
It was announced one day ago by the Syracuse Crunch, the AHL affiliate of the Tampa Bay Lightning, that UND goalie coach Karl Goehring will be their new goaltending and video coach, and he'll also have duties within the entire Tampa Bay organization, I'm sure. But Karl is leaving us after 7 very distinguished years as a volunteer coach.
He's always been on the short list of guys we need to have on the pod, but we had to throw him right at the top after the news came, and this is going to be a fun one.
He's obviously played under Dean Blais. He's coached with Dave Haxtell and Brad Berry. He's worked with Vladislav Tretiak. He's played with some of the biggest personalities UND has seen come through here. So all kinds of stories. In his 7 years here, a Mike Richter Award winner in Zane McIntyre, another finalist in Cam Johnson, 3 All-American goalies in those 7 years, with those 2 plus Aaron Dell in 2010-11. The results Karl has gotten from his goaltenders on the ice has been tangible, but the work he does behind the scenes on the mental side of the game is just phenomenal. And each one of these guys will line up and tell you as much.
So 5 years down the line, does he potentially have 3 guys playing in the NHL, you think?
So we got Aaron Dell, Zane, Cam will get a shot for sure. He's that's good work in 7 years. That's for a school that was never really known for goaltending outside of Ed Belfour, John Casey, and then we had that long stretch where we didn't send anyone to the NHL. Karl was our best goaltender probably in that period. Never got a shot at the NHL. Got called up on an emergency basis, I believe, for 1 game, maybe 2 games. Didn't get to see any action. But then this past decade rolls along, and suddenly we're back to being a kind of a goalie factory. It's been fun to watch. And like we mentioned in the conversation, a true labor of love, because Karl is, by absolute definition, a volunteer coach. He volunteers his time. He has a full-time job off campus. He's over here every day working with the goaltenders. He's on most road trips. He's at most practices. He's here at lunchtime working with one-on-ones and video breakdown and stuff like that. So he's been a pretty indispensable part of this program.
Think about that. If you had a hobby that you spent that much time doing. We'll take away the baseball card. If you had a hobby that literally you're over here, like you said, at lunch, you're every day, there's you have to take vacation to get on the roads and do all that. You're breaking down video. That's I don't think people realize just how much goes into that position.
And your work your work in a sense is under such a magnifying glass, because who has more pressure in the city of Grand Forks other than the hockey coach than the goalie?
Yeah.
It's not the best color man in the business for nothing, folks.
Well, what do you want me to say? I think you're spot on. We saw that last year.
Fun conversation with Karl, who spent about 45 minutes with us, and he's actually heading out on the ice again right after the taping to work with some goaltenders. So enjoy this conversation with Karl Goehring, now the Syracuse Crunch goaltending and video coach. So after all these years, 7 years, you finally decided to monetize your goaltending wisdom. Tell us about the big decision, what went into the decision-making process. It had to have been really difficult, and then ultimately what drew you back to Syracuse.
Sure. It was really, really hard decision, but had a great opportunity to meet the folks of the Tampa Bay organization, and they flew me down there for an interview, and was just really thoroughly impressed with their whole staff. I dealt with their assistant GM, Julian Brisebois, and just so detailed, so organized, and they really, similar to us here, they really, you can tell they care about their players and doing the right thing for the organization. So was really impressed with the organization, and when they offered me the position, was thrilled to accept and take a new opportunity and a new challenge here. But that being said, obviously grateful for my time here at UND and in the Grand Forks community. So difficult decision, but and certainly bittersweet.
Did you go back and forth a few times? From excitement to terrifying and all those emotions.
Yeah, I did, and I still think I am right now. Yeah. So, you again, just thrilled for the opportunity, but also so thankful for all the great people I worked with here, and the opportunities I've had. You just you don't take things like this for granted.
How did the conversations go with the goaltenders here when you broke the news to them?
You know what? The guys were so supportive, and that really helped out a lot. Every one of them to a T was just very congratulatory, and that really helped myself. And so grateful for all the guys I've had here to work with, from Brad Eidsness to even our current guys. You just, again, it's been so fun getting to know them. And
you didn't have Eids broker the deal for you, did you?
I should have. I should have. He would have got me a lot more, that's for sure. So, but just getting back to him, we've been so fortunate to have so many great kids come through, and getting to know everybody's just been fantastic.
So what kind of timeline are you looking at? How quickly are things going to move, and what's your first order of business once you get out to Syracuse?
Looking at, still waiting for official timeline here, but prospects camp will probably be late August, early September for us. So my first order, my biggest thing is really just starting the process of getting to know my goalies, getting to know my coaching staff here. I think that's such an important thing, is to really start to understand from a coaching staff standpoint their mission, how they process things, and how I can best fit in and contribute. And then again, for the goaltenders, I really just getting to start to know them, know their game, and see how I can fit in there.
Ultimately, do you want this to lead to an NHL position, or do you prefer to be more of an organizational, like a roving instructor type? What's the end game for you?
Right. I think the dream is always there to be in the show. If I ever get the opportunity to coach in the NHL, it'd be fantastic. But again, just so happy to have an opportunity with such a great organization, and just looking to make the most of it for the time being.
We don't know yet who will replace you at UND. If once that person is known and you could give them advice about, because this position's a labor of love. Yeah. You're a volunteer, and yes, you're absolutely a volunteer, yet you're here every day. You're on most road trips. So what kind of advice would you give your successor?
Right. I think the biggest thing is to always have a learning mentality. Starting out, you come in young, and you kind of have an idea of where things are going and what you'd like to do. I was amazed at how much my approach and things evolved over time with players. And so I really would encourage that person to keep that learning mentality. Don't try to force things, and really try to partner with the goalies. I think it's when they know you're in their corner, when they know it's kind of a team process and you've got their back. I've seen good responses there, and I would really encourage that for whoever's coming in.
Of all the guys you've coached here, who are some of the guys you could see eventually getting into the coaching profession?
There's quite a few. I would throw out Zane McIntyre for one. Just real detailed with his game, very professional, really understands what he's doing. I know he's done a little bit of coaching already in the summertime. He gets back, helps the Thief River Falls community. Matt Harinkyu is another guy. Obviously very intelligent. Not too many guys jump through engineering while going 4 years as a student athlete here. So, but again, Matt is a guy that understood his game very well, and I think that translates into coaching when you understand your game and the process and why you do things. And Matt's certainly that guy.
You just mentioned two guys, though, that don't really fit into the goalie, what we think of a
the
goalie
stereotype,
sometimes a little bit, screws a little bit loose there.
They're not Aaron Dell.
Hey, come on.
I don't want to say names, but
come on.
We've had a few go through there, so.
But you didn't fit that stereotype either, really.
Yeah,
Mr. Academic All-American.
Yeah, we all have our little quirks, right? But again.
Well, what was your quirk?
Huh? We're gonna keep that in radio silence.
Okay.
Again, I think again with the coaching though, it's finding guys that understand and then can relate to the goalies too. So that'll be a big piece for whoever jumps in here going forward.
When you inherit some of these guys as freshmen, how much of your work with them is mental as opposed to the actual fundamental part of goaltending?
It's really tough to quantify, but I try to look at it as putting the puzzle together for the guys, and certainly the mental side is such a big piece. If you're comfortable, if you're feeling good about yourself, you know who you are and what you're trying to do in there, chances are you're going to play a ton better. Obviously, technical is very important to make sure you're efficient in your saves, but without that mental piece, you kind of throw the technique out. If guys aren't in a good place, it's really tough to stop pucks.
Is that the big intangible you look for when you look for in a goalie, or is there something else that you look at and say, I need to have that?
Right. I think the first thing is they've got a good core built for their game. That they're athletic, they move well, they've got a good base for their save selections. But then resiliency is a big thing for me. Seeing how a kid responds after a bad game, after giving up a goal. Can they refocus? Can they shake it off and get right back into it?
That was a big one for Zane. He didn't have many back-to-back stinkers.
And that's always a big thing. If a guy typically responds well after a bad game, boy, those are the guys you want in your net. And we've been fortunate to have quite a few here, and so that's a big thing to look for, I think, in guys. And on the flip side of that, when if you're scouting and you're looking and seeing a goaltender that gives up a goal and is throwing the hands up in the air and looking at his defenseman, those are the guys that again, you hate to see a guy that's pointing fingers, and you want a guy that takes accountability and says, you know what, every goal, I don't care if it's a 2-on-0 or a point shot, I want to have it. So that type of mindset.
There was a lot of talk about, among the fan base, Cam's performance this year versus Cam's performance last year. And there was a lot more to it on the surface than just on the surface, what we saw from the stands, from the press box. I think to the Mariucci series, where they had grade A after grade A, and his stats looked bad, but the performance wasn't. So how do you view his 2 seasons and how he handled a different core in front of him this year?
Yeah, that's life and that's hockey, right? You're dealing with a lot of different variables as a goaltender, and numbers are one thing, but what's happening in front of you is another thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, Cam's first full year as a starter, again, phenomenal team, phenomenal season, and such an amazing memory for all of us. Last year we had our growing pains. We had lost. You don't replace a Troy Stetcher, Paul Ledoux. You don't replace those type of guys without having a few growing pains, or
the luxury of a Keaton Thompson on your third pairing.
Right. I mean, when I think back to that decor and how guys bought in, boy, it's just a fantastic group and makes your job as a goaltender a little bit easier. A lot of times the biggest challenge there is staying ready in between shots and being prepared for long stretches when you're not getting a lot of difficult action. Every season's different. This past year was a lot different. We had those growing pains, but again, to Brad's, to Dane, to Matt, their credit of, they do such a fantastic job getting guys to buy in, getting them to understand. But in the meantime, in the goaltender's world, a lot of times you're asked to lift a little bit heavier weights for stretches, and I think that was part of the season for Cam, and certainly know that he was. I was proud of how he handled it, but even talking to him after the season, he was wanting to handle it a little bit better. And I know he's excited about this upcoming season and has been putting in a lot of hard work this summer. And I'm really excited for what the future holds for him.
Every athlete is aware of their stats. So for a goaltender, what's the trick? What's the key mentally to not worrying about what's on paper?
Right.
I remember back to your senior year, the first month or two, the stats weren't what you were accustomed to. How do you handle that? How do you block that out? How do you compartmentalize the two things?
Yeah.
And try not to make up for it in one performance.
Right. I always try to tell goaltenders, I had somebody I worked with that, the most important stat is your wins. Most important stat is being a part of your team and getting that. All the rest is, gravy. But quick story, but I was playing in Milwaukee one year in the American League, and came off an injury and had a tough start to the season. I remember pulling up my stats, and goals against was above 10. Save percentage was in the sevens, and you know what? Finally just, I looked at it and I just laughed, because I knew what I was capable of, and I knew that wasn't going to be the case. But that's something I try to remind my goalies of. Stats are going to be stats. But at the end of the day, we know how we're playing. If we're giving our team a chance to win every night, you know what? If we win 5-4, great. That's not going to be a great stat night, but we got the win. That's the most important thing. So it's trying to keep that big picture perspective and making sure they're not overly focused on that and squeezing the stick, thinking, I can't give up 2 tonight, or I really need this 1 goal game that's going to help my stats.
Well, now you've got the added layer of it being the social media generation and that instant feedback.
Yeah. Every goal is a terrible goal. Every goal.
I don't envy our guys today. Boy, it was bad enough getting screamed at in opposing ranks as a goaltender right. and saying stuff about your mom and what have you. But now you've got the instant social media chirp and the things that these guys potentially have to manage. Yeah. So. I think it takes a little thicker skin nowadays and a real confidence in knowing who you are and what you're about.
And I'll give Cam credit there. He handles that pretty well, social media wise. Yeah. He reads them.
He's got thicker skin than I do.
Takes care of them,
and I good or bad, he reads it and handles it and manages it. So
our old friend Andy Kohler, he used to tell me he preferred playing on the road to home. Obviously, that's pre-social media generation, but did you feel the same way? Did it make a difference to you? Was your preparation the same regardless?
Yeah, my preparation was the same. I'll be honest, though, I loved playing at home. I don't know. I always felt a little bit of added incentive, and our fans were always so supportive that it really kind of motivated me at home games to really bring it up a notch. Prepared the same way and try to do the same things, but we have such a special atmosphere, right? And I try to tell people that you and our players, like, you just, the fan base here, our atmosphere, our culture here, you just don't take it for granted, because it's not like this everywhere.
What's your favorite memory of the old Ralph?
Boy, I have a lot of them. Still to this day, though, I think my favorite memory is freshman year being down 3-0 to Minnesota.
Yes.
Yeah. That VHS is still in my office.
We watch it almost every year.
You haven't got me a copy of that yet?
I'll work on it.
Okay. But boy, we were down, not playing great. Coach Blais, in typical Blazer fashion, gave one of the greatest motivational speeches, came in and lit into us in between periods. And I remember touching one puck early, like maybe 30 seconds in, no other shots.
I think it was a poke check even.
Yeah, no other shots. And I just remember Jason Blake was a blur, and
the Panthers got wheeling.
And all of a sudden we were buzzing, and we scored a goal. I think it was the go-ahead goal, and somebody threw a live gopher on the ice, and that was the loudest building I've ever been in.
Doug Woog took a timeout, and it only got louder.
Yeah.
They came back from commercial break, and the crowd was louder a minute after the timeout was called.
Yeah, and it was insane. I remember having goosebumps on my whole body, and I remember the thought going through my mind, okay, Karl, bring it back in. You got to focus. Got to stay with it.
Well, that's not an easy period for a goaltender. And the shots ended up being, I think, literally 20-1.
Right. But that was still one of my all-time favorite hockey memories, and something I'll never forget.
Did Blazer give you one of the same moments that we saw 2 years ago with Cam, where Barry says no more? Blaze give you one of those after the first period?
I've had quite a few of those Dean over my career.
He had a quicker hook than most people.
Oh yeah, itchy trigger finger. No, you know what? It was really team oriented at that time, and let us know how we were playing and what we needed, and message came through pretty loud and clear.
Hennessy loves to tell a story about you and Blais getting into it. It might have been a practice, I don't know, but a screaming match. He's screaming at you, you're screaming at him, and then Dean spins around, walks away, looks at Tim, and giggles. The whole thing was calculated. Was there more than one of those?
There was. There was a few of those, and I give. As you mature, as you get older, you have an appreciation for it. As a player, he was pushing your buttons, and I'm fairly competitive guy, and being called out, I didn't like it, but I usually responded in the right way and got pretty fired up, and I think Dean figured that out about me pretty quick, that he could stir me up pretty good, and you look back and you're thankful for how he pushed you, because it would have been easy to kind of be complacent, but I know he certainly stirred me to be better. So,
but you mentioned his itchy trigger finger. Did that enter your mind as you're in the game after each goal?
I got to a point where I was.
Did he ever pull you?
You kind of peeking at the bench peripherally?
He was always good with me, but I got to the point where, I took the attitude of, I'm going to show you, so to speak, and, a little bit of, lack of a better word, being a little bit pissed off and a little bit angry, and then just saying, you know what, I'm going to show you, and I didn't care what happens, but I guess that was my approach, but I know in the goaltending world, it certainly can happen where if it's happened before, it's in the back of your mind, and you start to think, and that's not good.
I don't remember you getting the hook in those 4 years.
I'm sure it happened. I
stick our intern on it.
Yeah. There's Jason's gems right there for the day to look up. So
you were our last goalie to wear a letter on your jersey. Do you remember that time and what went into that? Were you expecting that? And how did you handle it?
It was an honor. Our team voted me as one of the co-captains, and putting the C on, I think. I don't know why I tried to took on a little bit more of a leadership role and tried to bring that in, and at the end of the day, it wasn't me. I wanted to lead by example and bring my level every day, but I didn't want to. I hate to say this, but I didn't want to try to be worrying about the things that a captain worries about in terms of, I've got to go talk to this player, or address with the refs, or et cetera. And so after a couple of weeks, I talked to Coach Blais and said, I'd still like to be a senior leader, but I just want to focus on my role and lead by example and take the C off. So
was he on board with that?
Yeah, he was, and I think everybody got it. So I think goaltending's a little bit different in that regard, where it's so individualized and so specific. It really, in my mind, makes more sense to have the players as the captain and the goalies. We want to be leaders as always through our habits, our mentality, but those sort of things during the game where you need a captain to potentially address the bench or potentially address a ref, I don't think that makes a lot of sense for goalies.
But at the same time, you're the guy that's on the ice all the time. I mean, it only makes sense for that guy to be a leader. Whether you have the C on or not, if you're just an individual guy and you sit in your corner, it's probably not going to work out.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's really a big message I try to get across to my goaltenders too, is the better of a team player you are, the more guys are going to battle in front of you. If you're at practice working hard every day, if you're there lifting guys up when you can, guys are going to want to take that shot for you. They're going to want to do those things. If you're on the flip side of the coin, if you're, not a good teammate, that's when I've seen issues come up too.
So start cherry picking. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's important for you, and especially for me, being 5'0", when things get a little hairy in the crease, nice to have Mike Commodore come in and throw a guy away and make sure you're feeling well protected.
What do you remember about those 4 teams you played on? It's interesting. Your first 2 years, those were the more talented rosters.
Yeah.
Your junior and senior year, the less talented rosters ended up in the title game both years. What do you remember about that run?
Right. I look back and just think how fortunate I was to be a part of such great groups here. My freshman, sophomore year, Curtis Murphy, Mitch Vig, Matt Henderson as seniors my freshman year, and then that tremendous class of Hoogstein, Williamson, Calder, Panzer, Jason Blake. I just remember those years, like it was just going into places like an expectation, like it was almost shocked if we got beat, and not in a cocky way, but just but
largely with guys who weren't recruited highly.
Right. But I look at that roster and how much talent we had, and it was just line after line and guys that could play with pace and play with skill, and and just a great group of guys too. Just a fun group. Love being at the rink. Love staying late. And I think about it. That's some of my favorite memories. Is when practice was done, staying late, playing games of rebound, playing games of 3-puck, and just the chirping and the challenging and the fun of it. And frustrating both those years for how they finished and kind of the nature of college hockey, the one and done mentality. It's certainly a challenge. You'd hope teams like that would have. You want to win it all with the talent you have, but it doesn't work out that way. And then funny, my junior year, when everybody's like, oh, they're depleted. I can't remember what we were picked to finish that year, but almost like we were a forgotten team with the departures. And it was a great group. We bonded together. We rallied around that.
It's an old group. It was a veteran group.
It was, and I look at having Peter Armbrust, Lee Goehring, Jason Ulmer, those guys as our captains, and we really rallied around it, and had a lot of young guys that year, but just a special group, and the cards fell into place that year. And then even the next year it was almost a similar story. Dealt with some adversity, dealt with some challenges, but had a kick at it at the end of the year and had a lot of fun. So, again, just great memories for me, and so thankful for my opportunities here.
2001, how long did it take you to get over that game?
That was a tough one. Be honest, it took a while, but I also realized I had the opportunity to sign with Columbus that summer, so there was some excitement there to move forward and move on. But certainly, losing in overtime in the national championship games as a heartbreaker. And it's funny, I still get people ask me about both 2000, 2001, and the feelings. And Jeff Panzer right after the game hit the nail on the head, and he's, we're hugging sad, and he just said, boy, I guess we know what both sides of the coin feels like. So, it's makes you appreciate years like that.
Did 2011 in St. Paul, you're a coach now, did that feel very similar, even though you're a coach now?
Almost worse. Yeah. Just because I knew what that group had done and the amount of time that Coach Hackstall and staff had put in. And, it was so frustrating, that game, because it was just, again, a game I felt we carried and, give up one, and that was it. And so that was very similar, almost worse. And I think from a coach, it's it's tough because as a player, you can leave it all out there, and you did your part, and as a coach, you almost want to be back on the ice and be a part of it and do as much as you can, but it was tough.
I want to go back to 2001. How much do you think about who's on the other side? Ryan Miller. It's all anybody talked about the semifinal game is, how great he was. Spivak throws one in, I think, in the first minute, and then you go and shut him out. How good did that feel? And do you ever think about who's on the other side?
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, I know. So I'll be honest. In the media at the time, you're playing it down and saying, what, I don't care. I'm going to play my game. But
I imagine you face a lot of questions where everyone's like, "Hey, Ryan Miller's stopping everything. How are you going to do that?"
Did you see his numbers that year? I mean, it was like
960.
Yeah, ridiculous. So. No question. Internally you embrace that challenge as a competitor, and certainly that was something I was excited about. I don't think it would be normal as a competitor to not raise your game a little bit when somebody's asking about a guy and somebody's telling you they're the greatest thing on earth.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of the show them. So that was. That was a fun game and a fun win for us.
Did you ever get the urge to show off your ring when people would ask you that?
You know what? I try to stay fairly modest with the rings, but fun to bring them out.
Yeah,
absolutely fun to bring them out.
How much bigger was last year's ring than your 2000 ring? That thing's a hood ornament.
Yeah, it is shocking. That was one of the first things I did was put them side by side, and holy
Put
smokes.
one inside the other?
Exactly. Games change a little bit.
You worked with Vladislav Tretiak, I remember, in your playing days. You talking very highly of your time with him. What did you learn from him? For those who don't know, legendary Soviet goaltender. What did you learn from him? I think you attended his camps in the summer.
Again, just a little background there. Obviously, Vladislav was, the Red Army teams of the past, was at the time considered one of the best goalies in the world. Never got a chance to play in the NHL, but considered one of the elite of all time. Getting to work, so I worked with the camps there, and a little bit different mentality as an employee.
And where were his camps?
They used to be in Detroit Lakes, so every summer, so it was a great experience. But as an employee, typically now as a coach, you're just in skates, gloves, shooting, and that sort of thing. Not with Vladislav. He was full gear, full go. He wanted every drill demonstrated, full on, and if it wasn't right, he was coming over and telling you. I really learned hard work and mentality. I always had prided myself on working hard and pushing myself. The Soviet and how much they push guys and the work expectation, it doesn't stop. His camps typically have one drill. His camps had a drill and a side drill. You had to run, demonstrate both, and make sure everything was going, or he was over and he was on you. And so you really learn that mentality, that work ethic of really going all in, putting everything into it. But then not only that, just had so many great drills, so many things that pushed your athleticism, off-ice things that really increased your hand-eye coordination, your quickness. It's amazing to me to think how far ahead the Soviet training was for a long period of time. Like, they did all this without the ice rinks we have here in the States, and to learn some of those things, learn those plyometrics, learn those things that promote that was really, really helped drive me later in my college career.
We've got all kinds of questions here from some fans. Mitch has a Twitter question, then I've got some email questions.
Yeah,
we're going to bounce around a little bit here. We've got 20 plus years to cover. So,
who's the funniest guy you played or coached with at UND?
Boy.
And I think I have an idea.
A short list?
You know what? You know who's sneakily one of the funniest guys is Jason Ulmer. He seems like the quiet, good old Sask boy, but
he picks his spots.
He is very selective, and if there's ever a very funny prank, I have learned that it is Mr. Ulmer to look towards. So he can't say enough good things about him in terms of who he is, but he's also one of the and then he has the best straight face ever.
Mm-hmm.
You call him out, just weird. What are you talking about? Don't know how that 40-pound weight got in your bag.
Who did you live with? Let's go senior year. Who were your roommates?
So Trevor Hammer, poor guy, had to put up with me for 4 years here. I don't know how he did it.
Very opposite personalities.
And he was fantastic for me, because I had a tendency to bring stuff home from the rink and was a little intense. But he just so happy-go-lucky, so fun, and it was really still close with Trevor to these days, and thankful for our time and friendship, because he, I can't thank him enough for how much fun he made my college years and being together.
Okay, I've got a series of questions here from listener fan Mike Mavis. Tell us about your first game for UND.
Wow. So my first game, I came in freshman year. Dean Blais, freshman didn't come in with huge expectations. We sat down. He said, you'll probably play the non-conference games. Those weren't very important back then, and I just remember being so excited. I'm like, I'm going to get 4 starts, and I'm going to get my chance. I'm going to get to the, I always dreamed of playing
for the
college.
Defending national champs.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So you're fired up. You're so excited, and so you're just working, you're having fun, and I think it was second series of the year, we went to Colorado College, and I remember I think it was Jeff Panzer talking to me saying, you're playing this week. I'm like, what are you talking about? And we get there, sure enough, and Aaron Schweitzer at the time got injured in Minnesota, and Coach Blais just sat me down and said, "Hey, we believe in you. You're playing. You're going tomorrow." And so I'm like, all right, here we go. And I think we won the first game and tied the second that weekend, and that was my first weekend, and just so much fun.
And those were good CC teams. It's not the CC we're accustomed to now.
Those, boy, I think back Swanson, Peterson. They had a lot of good players. They were certainly a tough team in our era.
Tell us your best Dean Blais story. Suitable for family listening.
Suitable for...
And within our time constraints.
Okay. And we can blur that line a little bit.
We can blur that line. I got to say one of my favorite stories from my senior year. So Dean liked the offensive drills in practice, and occasionally Karl would get a little frustrated with it. And so I remember one time I kind of gave it to him, like, "Coach, come on, we're doing 2-on-0s again. Can you just give me at least a 1-on-0, something where I can, and just get in there and work, Karl. Just get in there and work." So sure enough, we're going to Maine that next weekend. What happens? We give up a 2-on-0, and I get scored on. Blazer right after the game, big smile on his face. "I told you, just trying to get you ready for the game, Karl." Just foot in my mouth, nothing to say.
Were you superstitious as a player? Like more than the average?
Yeah.
He said he was, but he won't divulge.
Yeah, I had my deals.
Pretty in-depth routine.
To me, it wasn't too bad. It was just putting on my equipment a certain way. But I think, like everybody, at times it gets to be a little excessive. But yeah,
I don't remember. Were you approachable on game day? Were you the kind everyone has to leave alone?
I felt like I was approachable, but that being said, I usually like to spend a fair amount of time just getting ready and hanging out by myself. So I guess more towards option 2.
Regionals in Fargo last year. Was it really offside?
I am going to say no comment, but I will say the video review was less than conclusive in my opinion, and I think that was the tough part. In a game like that, which makes me think of this question, what are you working with Cam in a game like that between periods? Or are you leaving him alone? And letting Pooley do his work. Yeah, if there's anything I see, and I guess I would say this for every game, if there's anything I see that I think is really pertinent, if something's happening, the other team's doing something, an adjustment I think is very important. Otherwise, I really leave guys alone during the game. Our work is during the week. If we're gonna work, we're gonna prepare, we're gonna get ready. Game time, I want them not to think. I want them to go do their thing, and I sometimes feel like if I'm saying there's something now, I'm adding something that might distract them. So that game was, again, it might have been a simple, hey, stay hydrated, listen to Pooley, stay focused, stay with it, but that's it. Well, getting back to that video review, I mean, that thing was, what was it, 6-7 minutes at one point? Longer. So it was like, at what point do you think, okay, I got to make sure the mental focus is still there for Cam when we get back going? Right. 100%. Again, and you're kind of in no man's land. You're up in the press box, right? And so didn't really have a chance at that time, but knew that was a message from our whole coaching staff with, hey, we got to play, get back in, get your heads back in it, and let's get going. But that certainly was. I mean, think about it. You go from celebrating, thinking you're moving on, to oh shit, we got to play again. Yep. Pardon my language. That's what Folsky's here for. You talked about Coach Blais being able to push your buttons. Which teammate had the uncanny ability to constantly get on your nerves? We did it, boys. I had a lot of great teammates. I will say, I don't know about push buttons, but I will say Jason Blake drove me and pushed me his time here. He was always wanting to shoot early on practice and always wanting to be, playing those games after practice. So in a whacking at your glove when you cover it. Yeah, absolutely. In a great way. I think it drove me drove me to be better, and it was fun too. I mean, he liked to compete. He let you know if he scored on you, and but certainly that helped me my first couple of years.
I can imagine every team hated Jason Blake.
And I think playing against him too, I can only imagine. Just I mean, he's relentless. I mean, he's just relentless, and that's what has brought him so much success. But certainly can be an irritant as you're playing against him.
This is a little out of the box here, but what was your favorite non-hockey memory at UND?
Wow, that's pretty tough. I guess I can't pinpoint it, but I pinpoint one. But I will just say, my roommates and I, we kind of started a junior and senior year. I lived with Trevor, obviously, and then Brian Lundbaum, and then we had another one of their friends from Roseau, Matt Rodefelt. Well, those guys love to eat, and so Thursdays, this was prior to teams having all the meals for them. We'd always organize a cookout. I shouldn't say we, it was Brian and Trevor, but those are some of my favorite memories. Was we'd grill, we'd barbecue, have some steaks, and Thursday night, and have a few of our other teammates over, and what a great time, just connecting with your teammates and cooking and having a lot of fun. So that was kind of a little tradition we had started, and probably some of my favorite memories.
Things are a lot different now, aren't they? Be able to hang out at the Ralph and just kind of eat here.
These guys never leave the building.
No, and so I think that's, we're so lucky to have what we have now for the guys, but I do think you miss a little of those opportunities to grow up a little bit, but to find ways to connect away from the rink too, and to know each other. And I think it brings a different element. You learn how to cook, and everybody kind of had their specialty. You'll never believe this, but Wes Dorey makes a hell of a twice baked potato, and so you just those little dumb things you don't know until you start doing some of those things.
Yeah.
So
if you played today, would you have the elaborate art on your helmet, or would you stick with the plain black or green lid?
Yeah, I always took, so even later in my pro career, I was always pretty conservative. I always liked the, again, I like guys to feel comfortable with what they want as a coach, but as a player, I always wanted mine to be very team oriented and not to be overly flashy and to try to be, I never like it when it appears like you're above the team or separate from the team. I always want it to be that you're part of the group. And I think that's a big thing.
It's 2017. You're a coach, but Mike Commodore is a player for you. And Mike Commodore's on Twitter. How does Coach Goehring handle Mike Commodore, player?
Wow. Very delicately. Very, very delicately. Getting to know Mike, he's such a fun-loving guy, and I think that's, as a coach, you got to find a way for him to be himself and to get the best out of him on the ice. So you want him to feel comfortable, be who he is. Potentially, potentially discuss the Twitter post and how those can be best shaped. But at the end of the day, he was fantastic for us here, and you don't want to limit who a guy is.
It's crazy to think how young he came in. He was 17 years old. Him and Jason Ulmer, I guess, were both 17 years old.
Right. Yeah. Jason actually younger than me, but a year ahead of me in school. And you look at Mike too as well coming in, and that's a big change. You're traveling a long way from home, going to school, and I don't think anybody ever looked at Mike as young because he always looked like
Paul Bunyan.
Yeah, exactly. Looked like the brawny guy day one on campus. So, and that's something I always try to remember too. Even having some young goalies here the past couple of years, boy, it's fresh out of high school and young kids and learning things, and so.
How satisfying has it been to watch the progression of Aaron Dell over the years?
I give him a lot of credit. He has really worked at his craft and elevated his game. When I came in here, quiet kid, it took some time getting to know him, but felt like he had opened up to me, and we established a good connection there. And just a lot of talent. He was so athletic, so quick, and certainly as he left here, as we knew, he was going to be taking the longer path. And so, I remember our conversations at that time being about the stick to it, no matter what, no matter where you are. And you look, you won a championship in the Central League with Allen, and then just continue to progress up. And you look at last year, I think he had the highest save percentage of backup goaltenders last year in the NHL. So for a guy, and you'll like this too, I got a call from a magazine looking to talk about Aaron, and one of the first comments was, so how was it working with Aaron, and did you do anything different with him being a little bit undersized? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's huge.
He's 6 feet tall.
He's 6 foot. The guy's huge. So, no, but couldn't be more happy for Aaron, and we were fortunate to have him here, and then really neat to see him go that path. That's not a path traveled often by many people, to be undrafted and to work your way up from the Central League, and especially now. I mean, 6'2" is kind of the standard for size in the NHL.
Do you think his personality suits him well in a journey like that? Because he's the most laid-back guy.
I think so, because he's, he is not going to be shy. He's not going to be uncomfortable. If he's in the Central League, wherever, he's just, okay, I'm going to go keep doing my thing. And that's one of the things we loved about him here. And, if we were in an opposing rink and the fans were getting crazy and loud, we always kind of wondered, do you think he notices? Because he just, he's so
blissfully oblivious is how I like to put it.
Yeah, but I think it's a great thing for a goaltender at the end of the day that things like that don't really bother him. And I think he does his business no matter what. And obviously he's been successful, and I know the last couple of years he's really dug into his off season, his diet, his training, and so I just you love seeing guys like that have success.
He declared music as his major, got a tattoo of a musical note, and then ended up majoring in something else. That's how laid back he is. Yeah. Before we let you go here, what will you miss most about being at UND?
Red pepper.
Well, after the grinders, I think UND is such a special place in terms of it's really the whole deal here for me. You've got a real neat culture with the coaching staff and the things they're doing here, a tradition of excellence that every day there's a high standard. We're trying to do things the right way, trying to get our players to do the best they possibly can. But then not only that, I think we have the most passionate fan base of any college program. The way our fans travel and the atmosphere every night, those things you miss.
I will miss on that first road trip this fall to Anchorage. We'll be up at we'll be down at breakfast, and I'll head up for my second plate of bacon, and I'll miss your sideways disappointing look. Where you just kind of look down under your forehead at me, shake your head once.
Sorry, Jason. I apologize.
My nutrition coach that never was. It's Karl Goehring.
Fantastic.
Thank you for joining us. Best of luck in Syracuse. We're all going to be watching and rooting for you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Karl.
Well, many thanks to Karl Goehring for spending some time with us today, and thanks to our listeners too for sending us some questions via email, via Twitter. As always, you can find us at Sit Down and Cheer on Twitter. You can email us at sitdownandcheer@gmail.com. You can email us personally. Our addresses are on the website. You're pointing at me.
Well, I was just going to say, thinking about that, Football Media Day coming up August 1st, so we'll do our Palooza again. So if you have anything for the football staff, send that along. We'll be there as well.
And we got some terrific feedback from our most recent football podcast, so we really appreciate that. Appreciate the kind words on that episode. What am I missing here? You can find us on Stitcher, SoundCloud. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Rate us and review us if you wouldn't mind.
It's pronounced Stetcher, you
guys. I got the Twitter. Troy Stitcher.
Drew
Stafford.
Just end it.
Let's go eat.